Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, as you know, in my military career, I did not get along with very many drill sergeants. I actually got along with this one. So I'm going to welcome her to the show. She's truly amazing. She's an author, speaker, leadership coach. She is the Swiss Army knife of positivity. Positivity. Debbie, welcome to the show. How are you?
Oh, wonderful, Richard. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my honor. And like I said, as people know when you watch my show, I love my female veterans. I have a couple female veterans that are closer than my sisters. So Tammy and Annette, I love you guys. But so I love my female veterans because you don't get the respect that you reserve. Like a lot of times we used to get together and we all get together and they'd be like, oh, say, all you veterans raise your hands. And then when they would raise their hands, we're like, no, not military spouses, military. And then so they would get a case of yes. So because you guys don't get considered as veterans, so I want to publicly honor you and say thank you for your service to the Air Force and the military into our country.
Thank you so much as well, Richard. And it's the perfect week for recognizing each other's service.
Yes, it is. Veterans Day is coming up, so I love all my veterans. We don't know them all, but we owe them all. So I just wanted to say that. So before I even get started, because I do have a traumatic brain injury, if I don't ask, I'll forget. What is your definition of resiliency?
I don't have a textbook definition of resiliency, but I will say for me, it's keeping going no matter what, making progress no matter what. And that progress doesn't have to look like huge accomplishments or achievements. It can just look like showing up every day, doing your best every day, being able to bounce back when things don't go your way. Because let's face it, often, extremely often, things don't go our way. But it's that ability to deal with that and just keep going.
Okay, so we're gonna hop back in a wayback machine. We're gonna get in a DeLorean and go back in time. Because if people would see you now, they would see how successful you are, how, how you're enjoying life, how you're great at what you do, but they don't see the struggle. They didn't see you growing up as a poor kid. They didn't see your father and your grandfather being military people and being on a farm. So why don't we hop in a wayback machine? Talk to us a little bit about where you came from, where did you grew up, and how did you become the force that you are today?
Wow. Thanks for that compliment that I'm a force today. But yes, let's jump in the Wayback Machine and do that. So I grew up in the Midwest. I was born in Illinois and raised in Indiana on a farm. The closest town was a few miles away, and it was a town, a very tiny town. So we definitely lived out in the country, um, and we were poor, but we didn't know we were poor because we really had not a lot of comparison to make with other people. And we just, and maybe this is where my resiliency comes from, but we just did what needed to be done. And it was just part of how we lived life every day. You know, get up in the morning, you had chores to do, you had, you were expected to do well in school, you were expected to do everything to the best of your ability. And we were constantly learning new things like learning to hunt with my dad ended up in the future giving me a marksman ribbon from basic training because I had learned how to hunt with my dad because it was necessity. We ate what we hunted on the farm, but we didn't know we were poor. And so we just lived life, enjoyed life, did what we needed to do. The first inkling I had that we didn't have money that other people had was I really, really, really wanted to go to this camp for drum majors. And I was already in the marching band. I got this opportunity to be the drum major of the marching band in my high school. Now, admittedly, this was a small high school. There were only 79 people in my graduating class. So it was small, but it was a big deal to me. I liked being involved in lots of different things. So I wanted to go to this camp, and my parents had to tell me, I'm sorry, we don't have the money to send you to this camp. We can't afford the fee. And so I went back to my teacher who was sponsoring me for this, and she got together with other teachers and they came up with the tuition for me to go to this drum major camp. So that was my kind of first hints that, hey, you can't just do whatever you want if you don't have this kind of money. The second hint was I wanted to go to college. All my friends were going to college. I thought it was a great thing. I loved to learn. It was amazing. I had a English teacher who since passed away, but he was so wonderful. He loved my ability to write and he wanted to apply for scholarships for me. And so he applied for a scholarship at Purdue University for me, which I received, but it was only this really partial scholarship. It couldn't cover even a year at the school. So while I was very grateful to him, I knew I wasn't going to be going to Purdue and I wasn't going to be going to any college because my parents couldn't afford it. So I had a really good friend. She said, I'm going to go in the Air Force and I'm going to become a dental hygienist. And we worked together at this grocery store nights and weekends. And I said, well, tell me more about this. I want to understand. She goes, well, the great thing is they'll pay for your college. And I'm like, idea. Here's a way for me to get college paid for. So I went through the motions of talking to the recruiter. It all sounded great. Showed up one day, less than 4 months after graduating high school, showed up one day, raised my right hand, took my oath, and the whole time I was looking around the room going, "Where is she? Where is she? Where is she?" Because we had agreed to go to basic training together. Well, she never joined the military, but I am still grateful to her because she was the one who pushed me towards the idea of going into the military. And I served 5.5 years in the military,
Okay, but I
and
want to ask a question. I just want to ask a
yeah,
question real quick because you said your grandfather was in the army, your father was in the army, and you're a very strong woman. And military spouses are sometimes stronger than the actual soldiers. Like my wife is way stronger than me. So talk about your mom a little bit, because especially because especially I'm trying to think back to that time. That would probably be around the Vietnam World War II and the Vietnam era. So what was it like being in the household with a veteran, and how was your mom? Was she a real strong person?
yes, my mom was a very strong person. Um, my dad was not in the military when he was married to my mom. He had just gotten out of the army when they ended up getting married. But as you know, that becomes a part of us. It's something we carry with us all the time. It's not a job. It's not just a job. It's something that becomes a part of who you are, part of your identity. And so dad always carried that around with him, his work ethic, his getting stuff done, no nonsense attitude to things. Mom was very strong in her own right. She was not in the military. She did go to college, Northwestern University. She was a dental hygienist. And so she also had a strong work ethic, but in a different way. And I think that they got on well. They ended up getting divorced actually when I was 11, but I think they got on well in regards to that work ethic and certain values that they had in life. And dad was very much a disciplinarian. I will say that. And I think that probably partly came from his army service as well. If he told us to do something, he expected it to be done and not making excuses. So, um, and there were repercussions if you didn't do it. So, um, yeah, I think that those are my memories. And then also him teaching me. So we had three girls and then two boys in that order. And I think dad would have liked it to be in reverse order, but you get what you get. And so he taught all of us girls the same things he taught our brothers. How to shoot, how to hunt, how to clean what you killed, all the stuff that went with growing up on the land.
So what was it like growing? What was it like? Because we're not talking about in the 90s or the 2000s. We're talking about joining the military a while ago, where it's not like it what is today with all the, everybody's got to do the right thing, say the right thing. So what was it like, being in the military as a female, a strong female at that time, when you first started your career?
Yeah. So when I first went in, my job was as a missile maintenance technician, fixing missile guidance systems. That was my job because I tested high in electronics. And so they said, okay, this is the perfect job for you. I had no idea what that involved until I got to tech school. And I loved lots of aspects of that. The brain aspects of it, I loved, trying to figure out why is the system not working and what can I do to fix it, troubleshooting it. What I didn't love was there were no people involved. It was the missile, the test equipment, and WA. So the guys in my unit, and I was the only female in that area at the base that I was at, the only female. So much they had to create a special sign for the restroom and wanted to flip it over when I was in there. And I'm like, no, we all have bodily functions. If you're in there and I'm in there, that's the way it goes. And they didn't quite know what to do with me in that regard. But I found I was really tight with the guys I was working with in the unit, and we would talk football, we would talk all kinds of sports. I love football, by the way, and we would talk all kinds of sports and talk smack and stuff. But there was still that recognition. But she's a girl, and so I would say I didn't get treated the same exactly, and it wasn't purposeful, it was just in the background, but often they did disregard, me for certain things because I was a girl. But I didn't let that get in my way. I felt like, okay, I love being in the military. I'm very patriotic. I love everything about it. I think everybody could benefit from a stint in the military. But I said, I'm not loving this particular job and career field. I was progressing, I was doing great. I was getting below the zone promotions, I was doing fine. But I said, I want to do something else. And so if you were performing well on all your evaluations, then they allowed you to apply for what they call a special duty assignment. And so I filled out the form and I said, hey, special duty assignment, I want to work with more people. I want something that I can do with people. And that's when they decided that I should get to go yell at people for a living. So I got my wish, special duty assignment, working with people, and became drill instructor.
Okay, so now, but as you're trying to move up, because I think people are like lobsters. Once you see one of them trying to get out of the pot and trying to grow, they keep trying to pull you back down. And whenever, like, my cousin, she retired as she was a doctor in the military, and she has a very strong, she has a very strong personality. And because they didn't understand her, they would just say, "Oh, she's a bitch." She would get that people give her that attitude because she was a strong female that was trying to move up. Did you catch any flack like that?
Yes, but it wasn't until I was a drill sergeant and I wasn't a drill sergeant. That's not really a good term because I was only an airman first class when I got in that position. So, and that's where I ran into it. That's where I ran into it because uh, people wouldn't want to take direction from me. They had to. They didn't have a choice. You know how this works. It's like,
Mhm.
nope, I'm the one in charge. But they really didn't like it. In fact, I had a friend coming to visit me, and I was going to take half a day off this one day, and I said, first I gotta have this conversation because I had a airman that didn't show up for morning formation, so I got to take care of this. So I counseled him and then sent him off to his class to catch up with the rest of the flight. And the lady that was sitting there, my friend, she goes, "You are a bitch." And I go, and she's non-military, by the way. And I go, I don't really think about it that way. I was like, the rules of engagement are understood. He knew what he needed to do. He didn't do it. And so we had a conversation about why he didn't do it. And then I told him, don't let it happen again, and sent him off to school. And she said, but the way you did it. And she was thinking about joining the military and decided not to because of that. And it really kind of took me aback. It was like, wow, was I being unnecessarily harsh in this environment? Because you do what you see around you, right? You emulate those who are also in the role. Um, the difference, I think, Richard, was all my counterparts were male and I was a female. And so when a female exhibits the same behaviors as a male does, sometimes we're called derogatory names for it because it's not expected of us, right? So, and then as far as getting ahead or getting promotions and such, I didn't really get other lobsters pulling me back down for that one, but I got people saying, "Oh, you're all about getting ahead," right? So that did happen, but it didn't really impact the way I showed up. But that friend saying that to me after she saw me in action, that took me aback a little bit.
But now, like you said, you did 5.5 years in the military.
Mhm.
Um, and and one thing I want to talk about is because, and now I'm seeing it more now as I talk to more um, first responders, more veterans, more athletes, that we all have a shelf life. And
Yeah,
they don't teach you when you're joining the military that you have a shelf life. One day you're not going to be wearing the blues and the greens anymore.
right.
And a lot of us think, we're 6 foot tall and bulletproof. But then when we're no longer that airman, or we're no longer that sergeant, and we no longer are in the military, a lot of us lose our way. Like for me, I did 23 years, and for me, everything was being Sergeant Kaufman after I got my break. And when they discharged me on Labor Day 2012 was the day that I attempted suicide, because they tell me I'm no longer Sergeant Kaufman. Well, I've been building that person for 23 years. Now, who is Richard? Who am I? And I think a lot of us, we don't have, because when we get off base, you step off base, we don't have a mission, we don't have a job, and we lose the camaraderie and we lose the companionship. And a lot of us fall into a deep, dark hole. So, as
Right.
soon as I want to thank our sponsors, but then I want to talk about how your transitioning went, because I know it couldn't be easy going from military personnel. Now you're military spouse, and you're seeing your spouse putting his uniform on every day, and you might be missing it at the same time. I just want to talk about that real quick, but I want to thank our sponsors. As you guys know, I love my veterans. Um, if you don't know that, the veterans are the best in the world. We are the ultimate minority. Only 2% of the population have ever served this country, and we're willing to die for the other 98%. So, guys, if you are a CEO, CFO, and you want to hire the best, hire a veteran. But if you don't know why you need to hire a veteran, reach out to my friend David Nordell from Max Fab Consulting. We'll teach you how and why to hire a vet. We'll also teach you the hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax breaks that you'll get just for hiring a veteran, and especially a disabled veteran. So if you want to get your company veteran ready, check out Max Fab Consultants down below. So Deb, let me ask you a question, because like I said, when I got out and I still had friends that were still in, it hurt me knowing that they were going to drill that weekend or whatever. But when you got out, you were married to a military personnel. So when
Yes.
he was putting on his uniform, even though you knew what happened, but it still had to ache that you were out of uniform and you were no longer part of that. Talk about that a little bit, because it doesn't get talked about a lot, because there's not a lot of veterans and a person that's a veteran and a mil spouse. So talk
Yeah.
about from both sides of the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a conscious decision to not re-enlist. when I got out because my and my husband's enlistments overlapped. And so timing issue, we said, it's probably best for me to get out. He hadn't made decisions for what he was going to do, whether he was going to re-up or not. But remember what I told you about growing up poor. So that's a part that's deep in me as a part of who I am and have my values and how I show up to not be in that status ever again. And so getting out, maybe the biggest shock for me was I hadn't gotten the degree that I went in the military to get. I had gotten lots of classes, but I hadn't finished a degree. And so now I'm out of the military. I'm trained to work on missile guidance systems or yell at people. I don't have a degree. And how can I earn the amount of money that I was bringing home in the military? So not only did I miss the camaraderie and the identity of that persona I was as, you know, my level in the military as a sergeant, but that's gone now. And now I'm having to wait in line and apply for jobs. And I had to work 4 jobs at the same time, 4 jobs to get close to the amount of money I was making when I got out of the military. And I got desperate at one point because I was burning the candle at both ends. I'm working all these jobs. I'm depressed because I've gotten out. I don't have any friend groups. All I have is people in these different areas where I'm working these different jobs and have no time to spend with them anyway because I'm working 4 jobs. And I got sick. I got a very bad case of an ear infection and strep throat at the same time. And I ended up calling a recruiter and I said, "Hey, here's my situation. What would it take for me to come back in?" Well, at the time, I had only been out for, I think, 4 months. And he said, "You haven't even been out long enough. It would be nothing. You don't need to talk to me. You just go down and re up and you're back in instantly." It was very attractive, even though it would cause a problem with mine and my husband's enlistments at the time. Uh, it was very tempting because, as you said, I had lost that persona of who I was. Who am I if I'm not this title? And so I had that low moment. I was very sick. I had all this going on, and I said something's got to give somewhere. And I went into one of the jobs I had was working for the Department of Interior for the government, and as a clerk because again, no college degree. They weren't going to hire me for anything else, but I got my foot in the door and talked to the boss I had there and said, "Hey, here's my situation. I'm just going to lay it on the table. I don't know what help there is out there for me, but I'm looking for any ideas I can. Otherwise, I'm going to have to quit all 4 jobs and go back in the military because that's the only road I see ahead of me." And she helped me to figure out options. She also helped me to get in touch with people. She said, "We've been so impressed in the time you've been here with what you can do. Let's see if we can get you into a full-time position, making enough money that you won't have to work the 3 other jobs and you can start to get your feet under you for what civilian life looks like." God bless her. If it hadn't have been for her, well, 2 things. If I hadn't had the courage to go in and say, "I need help. I need help." Because when you go in the military, everything's done for you. You don't
Mhm.
have to make decisions. You're told where to go, what to do, when to do it, how to do it. And I love that. I love that structure. And so now I'm adrift with no structure. There's nothing except what I create myself. So she helped me when I reached out for help. She threw me the lifeline. She said, "Hey, we've been very impressed with how you show up and who you are. You're going to go far." Years later, Richard, years later, fast forward, I spent 30 years at Boeing, retired as an executive there. When I became an executive at Boeing, she sent me a note, that first boss for the Department of Interior, and she said, "I never doubted it." And that's all the note said. And that belief in me and support of me saved my life, basically.
Okay, so because I've had a couple friends now that were with Boeing and they retired from Boeing,
Hmm.
and they said when they walked into the offices their first day, they knew there was something different. They knew that there were opportunities because not only were you seeing, you're seeing CEOs, CFOs, you're seeing pilots, you're seeing a whole bunch of people, and I mean, it was a stressful environment, but they said they seen opportunity. And sometimes I think sometimes somebody just needs to see, all right, there's an opportunity here. I just
Hmm.
have to go get it. But sometimes if you don't even have that opportunity or thought of an opportunity, a lot of times you're not gonna push for anything because you don't think there's any hope in the future. So talk to
Right.
us about the first couple of days at Boeing, what that was like.
Well, again, I had a somewhat circuitous route to get there, but I worked for the Department of Interior. My husband got out of the military after all, he decided to, and I'd been working for the government for a couple years. He got a job at what was then McDonnell Douglas
Mhm.
Corporation, and I was able to transfer with the Department of Interior out to the Los Angeles office where he was with McDonnell Douglas. And so I did a horrendous commute for about 6 months. It was like 2 hours each way each day. And I'm like, whoa, this is nasty. Something's got to give here. And a job opening came available at McDonnell Douglas on the C-17 program. I don't know if you're familiar with the C-17,
Yep.
but it hadn't even had first flight yet. It was a infancy program. And they said that we need a budgets and schedules analyst. That was what the job opening was for. So I showed up for an interview and um, and got the job. Again, my motivation for what I did was different than maybe a purpose of getting into an aerospace company. It was getting into a company where I didn't have a long commute and I made a good salary. So that was initial. When they welcomed me with open arms. Uh, they were like, "Yes, we need people. If you're willing to get in, roll your sleeves up and get the job done, do whatever it takes to get the job done, we want you here." And so I did a lot of different jobs with McDonnell Douglas. In 1991, I was on maternity leave from having my twin daughters. And when I came back, at the time, the company had a policy that was they had to give you an equivalent job when you
Hmm.
returned. It didn't have to be the same job, they had to give you an
Yep.
equivalent job. So when I returned, they said, "Oh, we do not expect you back right now. So somehow the timing got off. We didn't expect you back. We don't know what to do with you." So they sent me to this class that they needed to have a representative at, um, and they had no one else to send. So it was just like a perfect storm. I was showed up at the right time, and it was to learn about the Malcolm Butters National Quality Award criteria. And so I went to that lowest level person in the room, and being former military, I am conscious of who else I'm in the room with at all times. And these were all vice directors and vice presidents. I wasn't even a manager at that designation at that time. But I learned about this criteria and got to meet a whole new group of people. And that opened up a lot more doors for me. So McDonnell Douglas was nothing but welcoming. And then when they merged with Boeing and it became the Boeing company, that provided a lot more opportunities for me because I was willing to do lots of different jobs. Now, some people know what they want to do. They say, I want to be an engineer. Boom. I want to go up the engineer track, period, end of story. Great. Awesome for people who know they want to do that. I have never been like that. I've always been a person who looks out for, oh, that looks like interesting. I want to go do that. Or that looks interesting. I want to go do that. So there was tons of opportunity in Boeing. I stayed there for 30 years, so I must have liked something about it. And I started on the military and defense, space and defense side of Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, and eventually went to commercial airplanes and corporate before I retired from there. So I got to experience a lot of different parts of the company.
Well, something I like that you said is that you're sitting in a room with directors, presidents, and vice presidents, and you were okay with that. Because I have somebody in my personal life, they always want to be the smartest person in a room. Where for me, I want to be the dumbest person in a room because I already know what I know. I don't know what they know. That's what I want to know, and that's why I started this show. But I believe that like they say, if you're hanging out with 5 millionaires, you're going to be the sixth. So I definitely think that if you want to be the smartest person in your room, you're never going to get into better rooms. So please talk about
Exactly.
that a little bit. Talk about that.
Exactly. And well, this is something I think like we need to learn even as kids growing up, like teenagers, middle schoolers, especially, right? They always want to be in the popular clique or this or that other thing. But who you hang out with, who you spend your time with, who you focus your energy and attention on, you're going to become more like them and they're going to become more like you, right? So I love that you said I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I want to hang out with a lot of smart people and absorb that energy and absorb what they've got to teach me, and then go on to the next room and the next room, and never stop learning about that. And I don't know if I intellectually thought about it at those times, but my sense was that I always wanted to learn. I always wanted to surround myself with like super smart people. And I did. It was scientists, engineers, people who have all these skills and capabilities that I'm not naturally blessed with. And I would just try to suck up all that, the stuff that they knew. And I would be fascinated listening to them. And it took a long time, and someone asked me this yesterday. They said, "Okay, well, what's your superpower then?" I said, "Well, I didn't think about that, about me having a superpower, but what I discovered through being in all these rooms with all these smart people and sucking up all that energy was I did bring something to the party that was unique, that nobody else had. And I call it my ability to be a dot connector. And what I mean by that is ability to see things visually and go, oh, that connects to this. And then we get something greater than the sum of the parts. Or this person really needs to talk to this person because I think there's something special there and that could really work. So I spend a lot of my time just naturally, and I thought everybody could do it. I didn't realize it was a superpower until people started telling me, I don't see how you see what you see or how you do what you do because I'm not seeing the connections. And then I was like, oh, it's something that I can do because it comes naturally to me. I don't think about it being a superpower, but it is.
And I can understand that because, like, for me, somebody asked me what is my superpower, and my superpower is empathy. If I was going to be a Halloween character, I'd be Empathy Man. I because that's my superpower, and I tell people, I never even finished ninth grade. I'm a ninth grade dropout. I should never get as far as I am now, but I read over 6,000 books. But I also I'm very empathetic, and I know how to build relationships. And I think a lot of us, when you go to school, they teach you the hard skills, but they really don't teach soft skills that much. I think it was Mr. Zig Ziglar said it. I might be wrong. I probably am, but he said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think even if you don't have the bachelor's or the high degrees, but if you can have empathy for people and you care about people, you can go very far in life just by using your soft skills. So talk about that, about people learning and using soft skills just as much or maybe even more than the hard skills.
Yeah. I would say if you asked me what is the one thing, you can only name one thing that made you the most successful. And I would say it is my soft skills. It's the ability to connect those dots and go, okay, here's what we need, and just go make it happen. And working with people. Here's what I believe about leadership. Leader, all of us are leaders to somebody. We are a leader to somebody in our lives, and we may not even know who that person or people are. but we're not necessarily purposeful leaders. And what I mean by that is we don't stop to think about, am I setting an example that I would want others to follow? And because we don't always realize we are a leader or that anyone's looking at us to follow us, especially if we don't have like the management title, or but leaders crop up everywhere and at every age. You can go look at a kindergarten class and you're going to see natural leaders emerge that the other kids follow, right? Often I believe it's those leaders soft skills, because you're talking about leading people, not things or organizations, right? You lead people and the people do the work in the organization, but they connect on a personal level, a values level, a soft skills level. And if they don't connect with you or find some way to um, want to follow you, want to emulate you, then you're not going to get the most out of those people. They have to know, like your quote, right? They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So if you're a manager rather than a leader, and you're just looking at people as tools to get something accomplished so you can make more money or get more of whatever it is, you're ultimately going to run into a wall, because you are not focusing on the people who make the things happen. And the people are the ones in the organization who make it happen. So if you don't have good soft skills, you are shooting yourself in the foot. You need to be able to relate to people, be empathetic about what they're going through, help them be visionary, like that leader I had when I was working for the government, who said, "Yeah, we can solve this problem. Here's what we're going to do about it." If she didn't have good soft skills, I wouldn't be sitting here today talking to you, probably.
Well, you know,
Right.
because one thing somebody asked me, because I get on you're like my 1100th podcast that I've had, but I'm also on about 5 podcasts a week. And the question I get asked a lot they ask, "Are you a good leader?" And I say, "No." And they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "I don't consider myself a leader." And they'll ask me, "Well, you know, are you a good leader?" I'm like, "Ask my people. I don't have to tell you if I'm a good leader. Ask my people." And it was something I heard. I seen it on a T-shirt. It said, "Heroes talk about themselves, but legends get talked about." So I'd rather somebody that you ask, "Am I a leader?" instead of me saying, "Yeah, I'm the leader." Because I could say I'm the leader, but if nobody's behind me, I'm the leader of nobody. You know what I mean? So that doesn't do me any good, you know, because I know a lot of people, especially, and I've told a lot of people in the military, you know, "Sir or ma'am, I respect the rank. I don't respect you. I wouldn't follow you into the bathroom. Never mind follow you on the battlefield. You may be a leader as far as a rank goes, but as far as me wanting to take a bullet for you, it's not going to happen." But if my guys knew that when I got promoted and they made me a non-commissioned officer, I took the NCO creed very, very seriously. My goal was to get you where I am, so I can move up. My
Yep.
goal was to further your career, and I think, you know, that's when, because I don't care. Like I said, I don't care about politics. But when years ago, when like John Kerry stuff came out, and none of his guys showed up to back him up, that's when I'm thinking, okay, if you're a leader, your guys that are going to come out of the woodwork that you took care of, they're going to back you up, and that's real leadership. You know what I'm trying to say? So I think,
I
you know,
I
just
agree.
the word leader. You know, if somebody says, "Yeah, I'm a leader," well, if you're saying you're a leader, you just might not be a leader.
Yeah, and title is definitely not make someone a leader. And in fact, there's been way too many people that get a title and think they've been anointed as this excellent leader, and that's simply not true. That's you have a title, you're a manager, or you're a director, or you're a vice president, or whatever you are. But being a leader is something different and totally tangible. Like you said, if people would get asked that you are leading, if you're a good leader and they're there to back you up, that's your evidence that you are a leader. In fact, you can't tell me, "Oh, I got this title, so now I'm a leader." No, you're not a leader yet. You have to work at being a leader. And the reason we started Seasons Leadership was exactly that. There are so many examples out there of mediocre or horrible leadership. Leadership, I'm putting it in air quotes, of course. Um, People call themselves leaders, but they're just really not. They're not good leaders. They're not setting a good example, and I wouldn't follow them into battle. And so we said, how can we increase, my business partner and I, Susan, we said, how can we increase the amount of excellent leadership out there in the world? And that's where our mission came from. We want to increase leadership excellence throughout the world and starting right here at home.
Man, you know what? One thing I'm realizing that leadership is a lot of what happens behind the scenes that nobody even knows about. Like for me, if anybody looks at all my DMs, I'm always DMing my friends. Hey, how are you doing? You doing okay today? You're on my heart. I'm thinking about you. But I don't need people to know about it. But I think great leaders, if I know that, say, Private Joe Snuffy is struggling, well, me and him are going to go out to lunch. I'm going to take him lunch and we're going to take our caps off. And I'm going to be like, all right, Joe, what's going on? Talk to me. And it goes no further than where we're at. But I'm here
Mhm.
for you. And I think because sometimes when a great leader passes away, that's when everything comes out about the things that they did behind the scenes. You know,
Mhm.
the things, the people that they put through college, the people that they helped financially, but they told them, don't tell anybody. That I think is real leadership instead of just being a figurehead. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's making yourself somebody not with that purpose, but you do create a thing where you are now somebody that others want to follow, where they wouldn't otherwise go. And so they're like, well, if Richard's doing it, hey man, that guy's a good guy. I trust that guy. I would do anything for him. So if he says this is the way to go, I'm there. I'm going to back him up and go there. Right?
Yep. And,
That's
like,
good leadership.
and for me, you know, I've been in recovery now 30, going on 35 years, January 1st. And if somebody tells me something in confidence, it doesn't go anywhere. Nobody, you know, you could tell me anything, it's not going anywhere. And I think once people really realize, okay, this guy is trustworthy. I know if I tell, you know, if I tell Debbie something, if you tell my wife something, she comes from a big Italian family, so they don't tell on anybody. So, but you know, if you know that you can trust somebody, you'll always have that undivided devotion because you know I told him something 30 years ago, and I know it's never gotten anywhere else but between us two. So you'll always have that bond. You know what I mean? And I think in corporate, a lot of people don't have that bond with their leaders because they're just trying to move up into the next rung. You know what I mean?
The other thing that I think the military gets that corporate America in general does not get is providing a structure for advancement for people. So if you're getting moved around, this is corporate America I'm talking about now. If you're getting moved around every 3 years whether you need it or not, you don't have time to establish that camaraderie with the other people in your group. You're not going through lots of bad stuff together, the tough times, and making it through where you can really build that camaraderie. And you're also focused. Many people are focused on, okay, what's my next job? What's my next promotion? Where am I moving to? What am I doing? And it's all a big competition. Whereas in the military, you have that affiliation with here's the service I'm in, here's the career field I'm in that service, here's what advancement looks like for me. So it kind of takes some of the pressure off. If you perform well, do all the things you're supposed to do, you've got a clear path to advancement, then you can focus your time more on getting to know the people that you're working with every day and having each other's back and creating and building those relationships and that trust. It's a harder environment to do it in corporate America, and even harder, I would say, for entrepreneurs because
Now,
you're kind of out there by yourself.
now, if you're a team leader in the military, like I was a tank commander, where I know that if you give me an M16, I'm not going to hit anybody. I'm just going to hit the people behind them and around them. I'm not the guy to give that to. And I think the military teaches you to go. You use your people for their strengths. You know, there's certain people. Okay, he's a dead eye. You know, knowing that. Okay, Debbie can put 3 slugs in a quarter like this. Where Rich, I wouldn't even be by the quarter. So I think the military teaches you, okay, take your team, use their strengths to build your team. But I think in corporate America, we kind of got it. Well, he's got a degree in finance, but he's not analytical. He's a big thinker. So, but then they put him in the analytical role and they set him up to fail. So talk about building a strong team.
Yeah, or they say, oh man, this guy is really good at what he does, or this woman's really good at what she does in a specific field. So say, let's use finance, what you talked about with that. So they're really good at financial analysts, and they're really good at being able to crunch the numbers and see what's going to be coming out and give advice based on that. And then they get to a certain level and they say, okay, now let's make them a manager. Let's put them in charge of people. But maybe they're not good at people. Maybe they don't want to be a leader. Maybe they don't never thought as that as part of their career field, and they aren't trained well, which corporate America also sucks at, by the way, is providing the right training for leaders that they need to be good leaders. And so you're setting this person up for failure when you do that, when you say, oh, we're going to promote you again. And guess what? We're going to make you in charge of all these people. Well, I would think some of those guys would be rightly having panic attacks because like, wait, what? No, I know numbers, but I don't know how to do this. And so back to the question you asked about building a strong team, it is about knowing people's strengths. It is about knowing when you build a team where everybody's roles are synergistic, right? You've got the dead eye, you've got the big picture person, you've got the number crunchers, you've got the people who can take care of others, health, mentally and physically. You've got all that together in the team, or you borrow some of the stuff from other teams as you need it. That's going to be a high performing team because you as the leader aren't doing all those jobs. Your job is to build that team who can do all those jobs so they can achieve the success they need. And constantly as a leader, you're having to manage, remove, and replace on the teams, right? Because say one of your people gets promoted. I always embraced and dreaded in equal measure those calls I would get. They say, oh, Richard on your team applied for this job and we've chosen him, we've selected him as the candidate we want for this new job. And I'd be like, I'm so happy for Richard and I'm so sad because now we got to figure out how to backfill Richard's position on this team. So you're constantly working with that team to build it and rebuild it, develop these new relationships. I had a leader say to me one time, a client recently, well, what is my job if I'm not doing these things? I said, your job is the most important one of all. You have to take care of the people who are doing those things and make sure the environment's good, the communication's good, that they're getting the training that they need, that they're getting the support they need, and empathy, and you're understanding what they're dealing with and what their hopes and dreams are so that you can help them fulfill those. So you've got the biggest job jar ever on that team because you got a lot of responsibility for all those people on that team. And it's not for everybody.
All right. So now let me ask you a question. Like you're talking about, you're a big sports geek. I'm a sports geek.
I am.
Yeah. There's 2 gentlemen from Indiana, especially the gentleman from French Lick, Indiana, Mr. Larry Bird. And then we just lost Bobby last week from Indiana.
Yes.
But, Larry Bird, he was a Hall of Fame player, but not a Hall of Fame executive because he expected the same intensity, the same work ethic that he did on the court. He expected his players, and they just didn't have it. Just like Michael Jordan is a great player, but he's not a great executive. And I think a lot of times, just to think because I was Soldier of the Year, everybody needs to put in the same work ethic that Rich did, the same hours, the same everything. And when they don't live up to that, that's when we kind of start losing our team because we're putting them too high of an expectation on where we were. Have you seen that a lot too?
I have seen that. And I think there's two things that probably contribute to that, the majority of it. One of them is um, really outstanding people in a particular area, like Larry Bird, like Michael Jordan. They were excellent at what they did. They were the cream of the crop. They were so good because they stayed focused on that one area. They didn't have the same training, focus, practice, experience at being a business leader or a leader of the team as they did at being that individual player. And they're different skill sets. So that's one thing I think really contributes. I think the other thing that contributes is many people who are outstanding in a particular thing have some perfectionism, and they can fall into a trap of that perfectionism. And that trap looks like this. It looks like you're expecting everybody to have the same values, the same drive, the same motivation that you had in the role. And if they don't have that, then they're a failure. It's a 0-1 situation, right? Either they have all that or they don't. And if they don't, then you don't see that as them achieving what they could achieve. Instead of looking at what strengths they do have, you're writing them off because that's what perfection looks like. And perfectionists are unwilling to delegate to other people because in their heart of hearts, they believe no one can do it as well as they can do it. And so what that does is it blocks your ability to see potential in others because they don't fit exactly the same mold that you're in. So those two things, if you haven't had the training and the practice of being a leader and being ability to make mistakes, because when they first started out playing basketball, they weren't the person that they became, right? They made lots of mistakes. They didn't come out of the womb knowing how to sink a basket, right? But they learned it over time. We need to put that same attention on learning to lead others in whatever role that we're in. And that often doesn't happen. People expect to transition from doing one thing perfectly to being able to do something else perfectly.
Yeah, and like you said, and then we'll be heading down a little bit. That's why I think when Mike Singletary coached the Chicago Bears, and he threw Vernon off the team, and he says, "I can't win with him." It was because he was expecting that high level that he was at, and he couldn't take that. Not everybody else was at high level. That's why I think that he really wasn't that successful as a coach, is because he had that high expectation and couldn't figure out, I can't win with him because they don't want to win like I did. But you're Mike Singletary. You're one of the greatest of all time. Not everybody's going to have that same mindset as you had,
And natural ability to go with it, right? So
yeah. So okay, now the last couple questions, because this is a teaching podcast. If somebody was going to start out in corporate America and wanted to become, eventually become a leader, what would be your top 3 pieces of leadership advice you would give to somebody, especially now coming into the ranks? Because it's a different game. I mean, I never heard of safe spaces. I never heard of all this until recently. So it's a new game than when I came in '86. So talk to us. What would be your top 3 pieces of advice if you're going to get into leadership today?
Okay. One, understand what it takes to be a leader and make sure it's something that you are willing to do. Because it takes investment and it takes practice and it takes learning things and it takes caring about people. I had a guy come to me and say, "Oh, I want to be this level of a manager." And I'm like, "Okay, great. Why?" "Well, because I want all the stuff that goes with that, the recognition, the perks, the this, that." I said, "Then don't even apply, because it's not about that. It's you're responsible for people. And if you don't like working with people and helping them get where they want to go, it's not about you anymore. It's about those people. That's number one. Know what it takes to be a leader and be willing to do that work. Number two, own your own career. I learned this the hard way, as we talked about earlier, because the military tells you where to go, when to go, how to go, what to do. And you don't get that in corporate America. No one's going to be holding your hand and saying, here's the career path you need to follow. So own your own career. If you need to go talk to somebody to get allies in a particular area, for you need a certain kind of a training, you make sure you're getting it and that you've mapped out that career. Now, your career path can change over time. Life events, things happen that we don't expect. Great. Just remap it. But always be responsible for your own career. And number three, invest in yourself. Nobody else is going to care about you the way you are. And you've got to be willing to invest in yourself. Everybody has too many excuses about, well, they didn't give me the opportunity to do that. Well, what'd you do about it? Did you just say, okay, and walk away? Or did you say, oh, I'm going to go pay so I can get that degree on my own? Or I'm going to go pay so I can get the certification on my own? Or I'm going to go to this conference. I'm going to take PTO so I can go to this conference. You got to be willing to invest in yourself, or nobody else is going to be willing to invest in you.
And I one of my friends, he's one of the top paid speakers in the world, and he was saying that if somebody does something, no matter what it is, if it's for playing guitar or if it's whatever it is, for 18 minutes a day for 1 year, you're going to be in the top 95% in the world just by doing something every day for 18 minutes.
Yep.
And like you said, it's all about investing in yourself. And people say, well, I don't have money to invest in a mentor. Well, Audible is $15 a month. You can get 10,000 books on leadership in Audible that you could listen to for $15 a month. And your mind doesn't know whether if Gary Vaynerchuk is sitting next to you or if it's just in your ear. Your mind doesn't know any different. So
exactly,
like you said, it's all excuses. So I love what you're saying. And something you said, the first one you said was, because I believe, like Mr. Zig Ziglar, as you can tell, I'm a big Zig guy, and I love his son. But something he said is, you can have everything you want in this world if you just help enough people get what they want. And I think if people start thinking about that, it makes things a lot easier when you're like, okay, if I get 80 million people promoted, how can I not be up there? There's no way I can't fail if I'm helping other people get where they want to go. Right?
Right. Exactly.
So
and that consistency, that practice, that, one of my favorite quotes is that we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not an act, it's a habit. And so developing those good habits that are going to help us be where we want to be the person we want to be, show up the way we want to show up, is going to make us successful. How can it not?
So then where is Debbie going to be in the next year? What do you got going on, and how can we find and how can we support your future endeavors?
Well, as I said earlier, my business partner and I, Susan, we have formed an organization called Seasons Leadership, and our mission is to increase leadership excellence in the world. And we do that through multiple ways. We are certified coaches, we are consultants, we are speakers, we are podcast hosts. We have our own podcast, Seasons Leadership Podcast. And we are all about increasing this excellent leadership. If you want to find us, it's very easy. We're at www.seasonsleadership.com. And at Seasons Leadership, some people ask about the name. It is that we use the seasons of nature as a metaphor for life and leadership. So you could be in the spring of your leadership, or you could be in the fall of your leadership, and there's different things you focus on in each of those seasons. So listen to our podcast. You can join our Patreon subscription site if you like at uh, Patreon/Seasons Leadership. We're really easy to find. And as far as the podcast, we're available on all the podcast mediums, Apple, YouTube. Check us out and get in touch with us. You can find me personally at Debbie@seasonsleadership.com.
And by the way, I love your LinkedIn profile. A lot of
Thank
great
you.
information. So make sure you check out our LinkedIn profile, guys. So Debbie, I just want to say thank you so much. I'm so grateful that we finally got a chance to hang out, and hopefully we can build generational relationships from this point on.
I love
Guys,
it. I love it.
and guys, you know, I'm a big Joel Osteen guy. And one of his quotes that I love is, that's why my T-shirt says, "Today I decide." Guys, we have a choice today. We can either be a victim or we can be a victor. So, guys, if you're listening to this podcast, you guys are victors and you're no longer victims. I love you guys. Thank you so much. Debbie, thank you so much and have an amazing week.
Thank you as well, Richard.
All right,
It's been a
guys, well,
pleasure.
have an amazing week and God bless you. And remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is but up. I love you guys. Debbie, have an amazing week.
You as well, Richard. Take care.